All right. Thanks, guys, for joining on your Saturday today. I know there's some college football going on, but I appreciate y'all. Maybe put us on the side while you watch football on the TV. But today we have something very different for you guys. If you are familiar with Quest Trust Company, we do weekly webinars twice a week, every day, every Saturday at noon. And we try to bring education and value to our clients and even non clients. Today we have something kind of different, which I think is going to help a lot of small to mid-sized businesses and entrepreneurs. Before we do, if this is your first time, please let us know in the chat box where you heard about us, where you're coming from, what state you're in, etc. We'd love to know. And then I'm just going to go over a little housekeeping things, just so you guys can be aware before we get into the meat of the presentation. So if this is your first time, who is Quest Trust Company? Why are we doing these webinars? Well, we're a self-directed IRA custodian, and we have tons of clients who are looking for different investments and also just entrepreneurs in general. And since we can't advise on what you can and cannot do, what we try to do is educate as much as possible and share our network with you guys. So here's a little few facts about us, but the primary one I want to get across is we're not advisors. We're not telling you what to do, but really just trying to help the community. And as I mentioned today, it's going to be pretty helpful for those with businesses. Real quickly, if you don't know what a self-directed IRA is or what we do in general, it's ultimately an IRA account that allows you to invest into alternative assets. So we deal with a ton of entrepreneurs in multiple spaces across the country. These are some options that you have investment wise in regards to what you can invest into with an IRA account. So this is just a few of the things that we deal with on a daily basis. If you guys have any questions in regards to that, someone like myself or the moderator, Sarah Shellum, can answer those kinds of questions or call us any single time, Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5:30 Central. Most importantly, really what I wanted to kind of get out there before we get into the meat of the presentation is so you guys can be aware of what we have going on. I mentioned twice a week we have webinars, Tuesdays and Saturdays at noon, but there's other things that you can take advantage of. One is the happy hour that we do once a month on every fourth Wednesday of the month. And what the purpose of this is, we always get the questions, where can I find deals? Can you tell me where to invest? And unfortunately, I cannot, but I can invite you to a room where pitching is allowed, where deal pitching actually occurs. So if you want to just go online and quickly jump in and see what opportunities are out there for either your IRA or for yourself, I recommend that happy hour. It's virtual. It's really easy to join. There's usually about 50 to 60 people online every single time. And our YouTube and Facebook channel is a huge source of knowledge and education. Just go to Quest Trust Company on either of those platforms, and you'll find tons of videos and even our past recordings. This video today will be located on both our Facebook and YouTube the moment we stop the live broadcast. In person, if you're Houston, Austin, or Dallas, we have socials. So you want to shake some hands, meet some people, and network and find deals, come out to our Houston, Austin, and Dallas socials. You'll see they happen once a month on different Tuesdays of those months. So make sure you go on our website, questtrust.com, and check out when those are occurring. Our biggest event of the year, 800 plus people, 50 plus speakers, 60 plus vendors to help you and your businesses, you find investments, or in general for you to find clients, is a great place to be. So our Quest Expo is coming up actually the end of this month. Tickets are for sale, huge discounts. Call Quest, ask us about our discounts, what we can do for you to get you out to our Quest Expo annual event. And this one we have the one and only Emmett Smith also giving a 1.5 hour speech as well as a meet and greet for all the attendees. One thing I want to get across is referrals. If you are a client of mine, I appreciate your business. And honestly, I would love to get referrals from you guys. If you have had a good experience with Quest Trust Company, please refer your friends, family, whomever, so we can help them out to self-directed IRAs and ultimately find the investments and take control of their retirement accounts. That's our main goal. So again, refer. If you refer anyone this month, you get $50 towards your account and they get $50 towards their account. So it's a win-win. And there's no limit to this. You can consistently repeat and refer people. So check that out. Email us, call us, and refer someone, and we'll get some credit towards your accounts. But without further ado, if you guys have any questions, you can scan that QR code. It allows you to schedule a consultation with us for free at your convenience, at your time, or chat with us on our website, call us, email us, whatever you got to do. But as I mentioned, and as I promised, we're going to bring up our speaker today, Greg Kostiuk. He's going to talk to you about sales. Ultimately, for small and mid-sized businesses, I think every business out there has a sort of sales concept to it. I mean, ultimately, day-to-day operations is just selling in general to make a business, no matter what field you are in. So this is going to be very, very insightful, not only for you guys, but even for myself. So I'm really excited. I'm going to bring Greg up now. Go ahead, add to stream. And then Greg, I'm going to go ahead and remove my screen and let you share yours. Got it right there, actually. There we go. So Greg, thank you for joining.
Thank you, Juan. I'm happy to be here.
Perfect. And guys, just what you mentioned, what we're going to do for questions. If you have questions, feel free to just throw them in the chat box. We're going to answer them as we move along with the presentation. Greg has it split up into 4 different categories. So we're going to take a pause between each category and let you guys answer the questions, or ask the questions, but really ask them at any point in time within the chat box. But Greg, I'll let you take the stage, and thank you for being here today.
Well, thank you everybody for joining today. As Juan mentioned, my name is Greg Kostiuk, and I am the president and founder of StratX Sales. So today we're going to spend some time looking under the hood of sales, the sales function at small and medium-sized businesses. And I'll spend a minute qualifying the data in terms of who gave us the data and how we got it in a second. But first, just a little bit about myself. I spent 25 years in corporate America building and leading sales teams, small, medium, and large teams, in fact. I left corporate America and hung out my own shingle. And what I do primarily now is I help small and medium-sized businesses grow sales in a cost-effective, low-risk way. I have the tools and skills to be able to address challenges across the spectrum of activities related to revenue generation, but often I operate as a fractional vice president of sales for these types of businesses. So you'll see the logo down here, Sales Acceleration. Sales Acceleration, if you hadn't heard of them, is a privately held national company that has made the Inc. 5000 list 4 years in a row now. Inc. 5000 recognizes the fastest growing privately held companies in America. They were the first organization to scale the fractional executive sales space for small and medium-sized businesses. They have been in business for over 10 years. I am one of approximately 200 Sales Acceleration licensees. The data that I'm going to share with you today was compiled by the Sales Acceleration team, and that's how we have access to it. So enough about me and Sales Acceleration. Let's jump into it here. First of all, talk a little about who took this assessment. So it was a little over 3,000 unique organizations. Each one of the organizations, the assessment was taken by the CEO, president, or the chief operating officer, and all of the companies are from North America. Definition of small and medium-sized businesses ranges from 3 to 100 million in revenue annually. And I also think it's important to note that this is the 4th consecutive year of this survey being done. So we have some data to look back on and see how things are changing over time. So I'm sure many of you have either been the person blaming the salesperson, sales department for a company's performance, or you may have been on the receiving end of that blame. But I probably think it's not surprising that over 70% of CEOs, small businesses, rank themselves as poor with respect to their overall sales function. So we're going to get into a lot more detail on that, but I find that interesting. So in terms of the sales function, we've divided up into 3 categories. Those categories, as you can see here, are strategy, methodology, sales analysis, and the organization itself. So the specifics of each one of these categories is probably not immediately clear to everybody. So this slide kind of lays it out better. So the 4 quadrants are those same 4 categories: strategy, methodology, organization, and analysis. And within each one of those categories, we've got subcategories. And those subcategories really form the backbone of modern sales organizations. Deficiencies in one or more of these areas hinder or prevent an organization's ability to grow, respond to changes in market conditions, or even survive. So we are going to take a deeper dive into each category. We're not going to address every single one of the subcategories, but we're going to try to hit the highlights and see how these leaders rate their own organization's performance in some of the key areas. We're going to conclude this presentation by identifying strategies business owners can take to prioritize actions for the quickest impact. So first one we're going to tackle is sales strategy, a big word. We're going to talk about things like industry positioning, competitors, and one of my favorite topics, value proposition. So overall sales strategy. So this is kind of a chart. We're going to see this a few times. Across the top here, you see the year of each survey. Most recently, the 2022 survey. On the y-axis, it shows the ratings from poor, below average, average, and excellent. So again, overall sales strategy. Companies rate themselves in 2022 at 54% rate themselves poor, and an additional 32% rate themselves below average. Not a sunny outlook for sales strategy in small and medium-sized businesses. And one interesting note here, this significant decline here from as high as 60% in 2020, probably related to COVID. But that forced businesses to start looking at their business. It forced companies to start looking at their business differently and reassess or build a sales strategy. So that's probably good news. So before you can really talk about your own sales strategy, one of the things that companies fail to do a good job for the most part is truly understand their competition. And so this slide, you'll see 98% of companies do not believe they've done a thorough competitive analysis. And over 50% currently rank themselves poor in terms of even being familiar with their competitors. So I contend that without a full and comprehensive understanding of your competition, it's not possible to design a communications plan that maximizes your advantages. You may have heard of acronym of UVP, which stands for Unique Value Proposition, and ICP, which stands for Ideal Customer Profile. But you cannot. So we'll talk about a little bit about that in a second, but you cannot develop your own unique value proposition if you don't have a very good understanding of your competition. So target markets. So if you look at this slide, in 2022, the answer to the question is do you have a well-defined target market? 21% said they were poor, and 43% said that they were below average. It actually got worse from 2021. I don't have a great explanation why it got worse, but the trendy thing to do would be to blame COVID. Failure to have a deep understanding of your competition prevents you from developing that unique value proposition. And if you don't have a unique value proposition, identifying and targeting your best customers becomes significantly more challenging. Targeting becomes actually guesswork and luck, resulting in a significant reduction in return on investment for your marketing and sales spend. So, to kind of just recap the strategy section of this data, step by step, first, it's understanding competition. We have to be good at it. Secondly, articulating your unique value proposition internally and externally. Companies could improve a lot by taking the time to do this properly. And then lastly, once you've completed those two steps, identifying and targeting your best customers is always going to give you the best return on investment. So it sounds relatively simple. The good/bad news is that this is not an event. This is a continuous process because, as we know, market conditions change, pandemics happen, wars happen, and competition is changing their products and changing their value proposition. So it's something that goes on within the sales function of a highly performing sales team on a continuous basis. So I'm going to pause there. And is there any questions, Juan, related to sales strategy?
No questions thus far. Just myself viewing these numbers is pretty interesting. But no questions so far in the chat box.
Okay, we'll move on. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So the next category we're going to look at is methodology, and specifically, sales methodology is a broad category, but we're going to talk about territories, coverage, processes, and spend a little bit of time talking about CRMs, everybody's favorite topic. So overall sales methodology year over year is 21 to 22 is slightly less poor, but companies continue to rate themselves very poorly with respect to methodology. That's, like I said, a broad category, and it is the category that companies have the lowest score in. So I think everybody's probably heard of Salesforce. Salesforce also does a state of sales, annual state of sales survey. You'll see on the slide that almost 6,000 took their survey in 2022. Salesforce is a CRM, customer relationship management software that is typically used by large companies. So it's not surprising there's a difference in the data, but their survey said that 65% of companies are now using a CRM. Our data at Sales Acceleration says that 41% of customers are using a CRM. So there is no real reason for any business not to be using this tool in today's day and age. In a world of automation and technology, I consider it to be a must. The cost for small and medium-sized businesses is actually very low, and there's many excellent products on the market that can be deployed very quickly. But one of the things that I routinely see in businesses, they make the investment in a CRM, regardless of brand, but they fail to properly customize it, which dramatically decreases their chances of getting value out of it. And for example, one of the statistics that we saw is that when sales revenue actually went up, 70% of companies couldn't identify the reason or the root cause of why their sales went up. And properly customized and utilized CRMs are going to solve that problem. You're going to be able to easily look at the data and figure out what specific behaviors caused that to occur, which is obviously something that you'd want to know. Again, this is a little bit of a busy slide, but I think it's worth spending some time with. Each one of these five items, do you have a database? In this case, 31% of companies did not, or only 31% of companies had a database of who's in their target market. Forecasting. Another critical component of a sales function in order to give companies a look into the future as to what future revenues are going to be. Only 21% of companies are actually forecasting revenue. So if we look at these things in total, you can do virtually all of these things without a CRM. But having a CRM that's properly customized and utilized is going to be able to allow you to automate the process. This bottom category of documenting sales processes is a very, very commonly ignored step that's critical in coming up with your forecasts. And I'll speak to that a little bit more later. But I think you probably get the message that I'm a pretty strong proponent of implementing CRMs within sales functions in today's world. Again, Juan, anything on the chat in terms of questions?
So I have a question on the forecasting piece of this.
Go ahead.
So what's a proper way to forecast? I mean, ultimately, in different industries, you're trying to forecast, what is a proper goal to reach or a goal to hit or sale to make, whatever it is, right? What kind of numbers are you basing it off of, especially for a company who maybe doesn't have a small business who doesn't have these sales dashboards and maybe not a ton of years behind them?
So that's going to force me to get into a little bit of detail, which I certainly don't.
Loaded question. Sorry, I just figured that would be helpful for the crowd.
I certainly don't mind doing that. So the general procedure would be as follows. First step is we talk about documenting your sales process. And for most companies, your sales process is going to be 6 to 9 steps. And the first one might be, okay, so the first step is you pass the lead to the salesperson. And the last step is you close the deal and issue the invoice. But in between, there's going to be a total of 6 to 9 steps. So you look back historically at what happens at each one of those steps and what's the likelihood of closing based on historical performance. So if you get a lead, maybe historically you close 10% of your leads or 2%, it doesn't much matter. But then you can go through the process and you can use your CRM to look back and see how many deals are at what stage. And if you know your close rate by stage, you can then come up with a pretty accurate forecast to what's going to happen in the future. So I hope that didn't sound overly complicated because it's really not. But did it answer your question, Juan?
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Ultimately, take it step by step, look at each individual steps. And I'm assuming as you progress from step 1 to, let's say, 4 of 6, your conversion will be probably lower by 4, but that gives you an idea, right? Because you're kind of moving along with clients or whoever it is you're selling to.
No, that's absolutely correct. The further down the process you get, the higher the likelihood of close. But every deal is going to be at a different stage at any point in time. So you can calculate the likelihood of revenue being generated regardless of what stage the deal is at.
Cool. Thank you. No further questions.
All right. Thank you. The next category is sales analysis. And generally speaking, we're talking about goals and quotas and metrics and reporting. And then the big one is compensation. So everybody likes to talk about compensation and incentives. So we'll do just that. Big picture wise, not making a lot of progress in having the right goals and metrics. And again, the situation is not particularly good in small and medium-sized businesses. That the combination, over 70% rank themselves as poor in this area, and a lot of cases is KPIs and metrics are set up as a look back in time, where what the real objective is to set them up as forward-looking or leading indicators of future performance. So a little bit. So at 70% of small and mid-sized business have not established annual sales goals. Coming from a big company or a public company, I'm sure that's shocking to some people. It was to me. So most of these companies are admitting they're failing to even do the basics, which, like an annual sales goal. The next step would be to align the sum of each sales rep's quota compared to their overall goals. And that last little piece of data, 66% of sales teams are focusing their time on things that are not consistent with management objectives. That's a big problem. And so it has a significant negative impact on overall sales performance. So one of the things that's not particularly well understood is that salespeople are motivated and they're quite different than most other employees. And I know this because at my core, I'm a salesperson. But the use of quota is many business owners are uncomfortable with it. They feel bad and refrain from assigning quota to individuals because they feel it puts too much pressure on them. Most often, salespeople will prefer to have a quota. They prefer to know where they stand. And then quota can be a part of something we're going to talk about in a second, the variable portion of a sales rep's compensation. But at the end of the day, the compensation plan for sales reps is specifically designed, needs to be specifically designed to get salespeople to exhibit the behaviors that management wants. And the compensations plan is a key way to do that. So building on that comment a little bit, we'll just so we understand what's going on this slide. So in this category, 7% of companies are paying their sales reps 100% variable compensation. So no base salary at all, 100% variable compensation. Sort of the top right here, 31% of companies, high base salary and low variable. So what do we mean by variable? Sometimes it's straight commission on revenue generated, but it doesn't have to be. And statistically, we know what the most successful compensation plans are. They're these ones that have approximately a 50% base salary and a 50% variable component. That variable component, it's extremely important, is designed that it is something within the control of the individual rep. And like I said, it oftentimes can be revenue generated, a specific commission on revenue generated, but it doesn't have to be. It can also be tied to other steps in the sales process that we discussed a minute ago. Interestingly enough, I've met many business owners that have, when I've explained to them that their compensation scheme is ineffective, they tell me I'm wrong because they have a unique business. The data just does not bear this out. eventually business owners do come to realize that it's in their best interest to really focus on getting the right compensation plan in place for their business. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to organization. Some key insights into this, and we're going to talk primarily about staffing and hiring, roles and responsibilities. However, sales organization is much broader than that. We're going to focus on staffing, hiring, and training roles and their responsibilities, but this particular slide is talking about sales ops. And sales ops, also commonly called sales support, is broader than that. It includes things like data management, training, lead generation, and organizational structure. So just on a very high level, again, self-ranking, small and medium-sized businesses, they're in the mid 60% range. In fact, 83% if you are rank themselves as either poor or below average generally. But I think it's becoming more widely recognized that the general category of sales ops is becoming more important, and that's supported by a high level of sales professionals that took the Salesforce assessment, stating of how much more important sales ops is to the success of their roles. And we're seeing a much larger investment in this area as well. And one of the things that small businesses can do in terms of investment is just identifying leadership. Who's in charge of sales support within the function? Very often it just gets tossed and divvied up amongst salespeople and sales managers, but it really should be segregated and separated with unique responsibilities. So common problem. I can't seem to find the right salespeople. I think everybody's probably heard that complaint from an organization or a president before. There's overwhelming evidence to suggest that it makes sense to invest in professional assistance here. Do-it-yourself automated platforms like Indeed or LinkedIn may be effective for recruiting for other jobs, but in sales, we've found it to have a strikingly low success rate. And there's obviously reasons for this. It's probably true that professionals are better at their jobs than amateurs, but one real key reason that I think that the success rate is higher is because professional recruiting people tend to use tools that are available to assess behavior, so behavioral analysis. And there's two issues there. One is cultural with a given company, and so they can make recommendations and analysis of whether a given candidate would fit into a specific company culture. But very importantly, they can quickly identify sales skills and align them with the type of selling an individual, a specific role would have. So that's actually kind of an easy fix and will dramatically reduce the number of failed hires organizations have. So that kind of brings us to the conclusion of the discussions around the four topics. Juan, is there any questions come up?
What is a characteristic of an individual you look for? Obviously, like you mentioned, professional help is useful. But if you're looking at a person, you're talking to them, interviewing them, down to that piece of, in the interview process, what is a characteristic or something that you would look for in a candidate?
Yeah, it's a little more nuanced than a general category. But for example, when you're talking about somebody that's doing value-based selling or primarily selling based on relationships, that type of individual is usually not well, the types of individuals that succeed in that type of sales role are perceived as being very extroverted and, um, talk the spots off of a forget the name of the cat, talk the stripes off a zebra. But in actual fact, that's not the case. The most successful value-based sales professionals are right in the middle between introverts and extroverts. So what I look for is listening skills in that case. That's one example, but the assessments that the professional assessments available for specific sales roles are extremely detailed and specific and proven to be successful. Different types of traits would apply to somebody that's selling based on transactional sales or other types of selling activities.
Gotcha. That's very helpful. I'll let you get to your conclusion, but I also wanted to mention, well, recently you just went over the compensation and sort of kind of what motivates the individual. I think that was super helpful. And for those small businesses, if you're watching and you're an individual who has a small business we do a lot of real estate investors that, watch our webinars. So if you're a small business of, someone who does a roofing company, for example, I have clients that do a roofing company or a property management company, and you're looking for a way to motivate your team and, find the right forecasting, like we spoke about before. The information you've provided is honestly like a cheat code. But it's a cheat code in a way that if you don't have these pillars in place, I feel like you're kind of working with nothing. So I understand that what you're saying is really you need all these pillars in place to have a proper sales department and sales process.
Yeah, I'll get into that. It's a good comment. I'll get into it a little bit more right now. I was planning to do it later, but I think it's relevant. So we know that businesses fail at an alarmingly high rate in the first 5 years of existence. And some people say it's 90% of businesses fail in the first 5 years. Other people say it's 60. It doesn't really matter. A lot of businesses fail early on. So a primary contributor to that failure rate is not necessarily that the founder doesn't know what he's doing or the product or service is bad, but it's an inability to have a predictable revenue stream over time. And so when they get into this cyclic revenue stream, it's very, very difficult or even impossible for a business owner to invest in other areas of his business to help it be better and help it be great. And so it becomes a situation of survival, hoping the next month is going to be better revenue when you don't understand what's going to happen. So putting the building blocks, the foundational building blocks, which is really those sales processes in place and building on them really allows a business to grow and scale and reinvest in their own success. So I'll go ahead and talk about some of the things that you can do that seem simple but they're proven to have the most likely chance of sort of low-hanging fruit, return on investment quickly. So if you're not doing these things as a business owner already, these will be the priorities. So the number one thing is the compensation piece. Just a reminder, so we said that comp is best 50% variable and 50% base pay for the vast majority of businesses. And I'll reiterate that variable piece doesn't necessarily need to be tied to a specific revenue generation and a percentage commission paid on it. It can be tied to any number of KPIs or metrics depending on the business, but those things need to be within the control of the individual rep. So compensation is a big one. We spoke about the processes. So those 6 to 9 process steps. First of all, if you haven't, document them. And once you've by documenting them, it forces the organization to really take a hard look at if those steps are really aligning with the buyer's journey. Is that the way the buyer is purchasing your product or service? And if it isn't, then you need to think about changing your processes to align with that buyer's journey. The third thing, goals, KPIs, and metrics. And everybody needs to know where they stand, and that's important for your compensation plan, but also to reassure people or for people to understand that they're doing the right things every day. And those will really help you with that terrible statistic we saw where 66% of business owners didn't feel like their sales staff was spending time on the right things. So if you have key performance indicators in place that make sense, it will really help your sales department in terms of focusing their activities correctly. And then the individual goals and metrics need to be tied back to the company goal. So once you've set an overall revenue objective and set your other goals, it becomes easier to tie individuals back to those goals or create KPIs for the individuals. So here's one we didn't really talk about. This is the fourth thing, and at least to me seems like completely simple, but we see it having a really negative impact on retention of salespeople is just not having a documented, well thought out onboarding program. So when I was running a big sales team, we had a documented onboarding program, but this says through 90 days. Ours was through the first year, and really give the salespeople that you've invested so much in the opportunity to be successful. And lastly, or number 5, I mentioned a little bit about leading indicators. So your metrics should be focused on leading, and a good example is of a trailing indicator would be last month's revenue. So to me, that's not really a metric. A metric is more like what we call sales velocity, where you take the number of leads that you have, multiply it by the selling price, and divide by your closing rate. And this can be converted into a dollar per month metric. And it is things like that type of leading indicator is very, very valuable information for management to make decisions on. So that is almost the conclusion of my presentation, but I will close by offering some free tools. We have several of them. For example, sales strategy checklist. This coming up with a sales strategy doesn't have to be mission to Mars. It can be kept relatively simple, but it's important to have. And that applies to almost everything that I talked about today. But like I said, I have a lot of free resources available to business owners and sales leaders to kind of help them puzzle through this. And I encourage you, if you want access to some of these tools, you can see my email address there or just connect with me on LinkedIn.
I appreciate that, Greg. Honestly, I think I will even take you up on that. I'll probably be shooting you an email. But That was really helpful. And points number 4 and 5, I think, were super important too. The point number 4 on the action plan on making sure your sales team is onboarded properly and educated, and they understand, the role and how to, ultimately how to do the role, right? Every business is different. Every product they're selling is different. So I find that huge. Ultimately, I feel like if small businesses are starting off getting a sales individual and then just expecting them to go on day one, you may not be satisfied with those results. We don't have any questions in the chat box right now, but I wanted to thank you for joining and ask you one last question. Ultimately, that might be helpful for those watching. And before we head out here, if you are maybe sales are struggling, if things aren't going well, what's one thing that a golden nugget that you would recommend someone looking to changing, or what may be the reason for that failure? That may be a super hard question. I'm sorry for that, but one golden nugget before you leave, essentially, if you could.
Yeah. As a entrepreneur, a business owner, it is very, very unusual for sales to remain flat. If the old adage, if you're not growing, then you're destined for failure. And so when you see situations where you've got flat or declining sales, situations where you've got a bit of a revolving door with salespeople, and you're not happy with the performance of the sales team, give somebody like me a call. It's free to talk about these. It's free to talk to me about these things. And there are solutions, and they don't have to be, sales is 95% science. And it's not some black art, but most business owners didn't start a business because they were good at sales. They're good at something else, and putting plans and processes in place for their sales function can really, really reduce the likelihood of significant revenue problems.
Super helpful. Yeah, well, those watching, I really hope you take advantage of the generous offer Greg has given y'all, contacting him, emailing him personally, and even getting the free content there for sales tools. But Greg, I don't know if you can see me or anything. I think you maybe not yet, but I appreciate your time as well. I know it's Saturday. I know right now Bama's playing UT, so that's a solid game if you're into football. So I appreciate you taking some time off of your Saturday afternoon to join us today. And those of you watching, likewise. So if you guys need anything else, please contact us. Please contact Greg for his time. And also check out the recording. Again, it'll be on YouTube if you missed this, and share it with people. So again, Greg, thank you for your time. And we'll go ahead and end the broadcast.
Thank you, Juan. Bye, everybody. Appreciate it.